Have you ever heard a strange noise in your house at night and tried to convince yourself it was just the pipes or the wind? That's exactly what the Miller family told themselves when they first moved into their dream home. It started subtly, soft footsteps from the basement when everyone was upstairs. The faint sound of boxers shifting, long after they had finished unpacking. At first, it was easy to dismiss. It's an old house, they'd say. Old houses make noises, but soon, the noises became harder to ignore. One evening, as Sarah Miller was cooking dinner, a child's toy, a little red ball that had been sitting motionless in the corner of the living room, slowly rolled across the floor and stopped right at her feet. Her heart pounded in her chest. Her two young children were both in their rooms, fast asleep. Her husband, Tom, was still at work. There was no explanation. That night, the whispers began. Te werelu, almost inaudible, like the faint hiss of a radio between stations, seeming to emanate from the floorboards right beneath their beds. The next morning, determined to find a rational explanation, Tom decided to check the basement. He'd been down there 100 times, but this time felt different. As he opened the door, a wave of cold air washed over him, a stark contrast to the warmth of the house. He flipped the light switch. The single bulb flickered erratically, casting dancing shadows across the concrete walls. As he took a step down the wooden stairs, their family dog, Buster, a brave golden retriever who feared nothing, stopped dead at the top of the stairs, a low growl rumbling in his chest. His eyes were fixed on the far, dark corner of the basement. Tom followed his gaze. For a fleeting second, he saw it, a tall, dark shadow that seemed to detach itself from the wall, darker than the surrounding gloom, before vanishing completely. He blinked, telling himself his eyes were playing tricks on him. But Bus's continuous growling told a different story. Over the next few days, the activity escalated from strange to terrifying. Doors would slam shut with violent force, even when there was no draft. The feeling of being watched was constant, a heavy, oppressive presence that followed them from room to room. Sarah would hear heavy breathing right behind her, only to turn around and find nothing but empty air. They started sleeping with all the lights on, huddled together in the master bedroom, but the sense of dread never left. The whispers grew louder, clearer, almost forming words they couldn't quite understand. It felt like something was trying to communicate, or worse, trying to taunt them. Desperate for answers, Tom set up a small security camera in the living room, pointing it towards the basement door. He hoped to catch a raccoon or some other animal that might have gotten in. What he captured was far more disturbing. Reviewing the footage the next morning, he watched the hours of stillness fast forward. Then, at exactly 3:07 a.m., the basement door creaked open on its own. For several long minutes, nothing happened. Then, a figure emerged. It was tall, unnaturally so, with limbs that seemed too long for its body. It moved in a distorted, jerky manner, like a puppet with its strings cut. It stood in the hallway for a moment, its head slowly turning as if scanning the upstairs rooms, before it glided back into the darkness of the basement and the door slowly swung shut. The video was the final straw. This wasn't a draft or an old house settling. This was something inhuman, something that had been living beneath their home, watching them, waiting. They knew they couldn't stay another night, but they needed to understand what it was. What was in their basement, armed with heavy flashlights and a steel pipe? Tom and Sarah made one final, terrifying descent into the darkness below. Buster whined and paced frantically at the top of the stairs, refusing to follow. The basement was colder than ever before. Their breath plumed in front of them like smoke. The single light bulb flickered and died the moment they both reached the bottom step, plunging them into near total darkness, illuminated only by the beams of their flashlights. The air was thick and smelled of damp earth and something else. Something foul, like decay. They moved cautiously, their flashlight beams cutting through the oppressive black. They scanned the piles of old boxers, the furnace, the water heater. Nothing seemed out of place. Then, Sarah's light fell on the far wall, the same spot where Tom had seen the shadow. The concrete there looked different. It was uneven and a section of it seemed to be crumbling, driven by a desperate need for answers. Tom took the steel pipe and struck the wall. A chunk of concrete broke away, revealing not solid foundation, but a dark, hollow space behind it. He struck it again and again, Widening the hole, a putrid smell billowed out, so strong it made them gag. Tom shone his flashlight into the newly made opening. Inside was a small, cramped space, almost like a hidden room. And in that room was a small, wooden chair facing a collection of old, faded photographs. They were pictures of the Miller family, pictures taken from inside the house, through windows, from hidden corners. Pictures of them sleeping, eating dinner, playing in the yard, and in the corner of every single photo, barely visible, was the same distorted, shadowy figure, watching. It had been there the whole time. It had been documenting their lives, studying them from its hidden lair beneath their feet. Suddenly, a low, guttural laugh echoed from the darkness right behind them. It was deep, rattling, and filled with a chilling malice. It was the laugh of something that had finally been found, and was glad for it. They didn't scream. They didn't even look back. They just ran. They scrambled up the stairs, burst through the front door, and didn't stop running until they were bathed in the safety of the streetlights. They left everything behind: their clothes, their furniture, their memories. They never went back. To this day, the house sits empty. Locals say that on quiet nights you can still see the basement light flickering, and sometimes if you look closely, you can see a tall, dark figure standing in the window, watching and waiting for the next family to call its house a home. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more chilling tales. See you next time.